Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 73 of A Letter to the King. If you're new to the series, it's my attempt to keep you up to date with what's going on PvP-wise on the global PvP server, the server that never sleeps, or indeed, as it will have to be renamed shortly, the server where no one ever logs in. And that will be somewhat of a running theme during today's Letter to the King. Before we get stuck into the details of this week, let's see where we were at the end of last week. Those pesky pirate types had managed to crash another British port, taking out Cartagena, which is one of, or was one of, the clan bases, and the lack of resistance there was somewhat underwhelming from a British perspective. The rest of the map was pretty stable, with the only other area of activity really being down in the Antilles, where the poor old Frenchies, and things have got to be pretty bad for me to be calling them the poor old Frenchies. The poor old Frenchies took a shellacking and lost all but two of the ports. The only two ports they were holding down there was Puerto de España, which I think is also called Trinidad, just to, let's name everything the same thing, because derp. And Santo Tome de Guayana, which will be the worst pronunciation ever, but I prefer the capital name of Orinoco, as obviously it was named after one of the famous Wombles. Politically, not a great deal has changed. The French are basically being targeted by the pirates and the Danes, and even, lordy lord forbid, the Swedes. Although I think the Swedes might just have been doing a port swap with their Danish buddies. The Brits are still grumpy with the pirates, but not grumpy enough to get their shit together and really do anything particularly astounding about it. Let's see if that can change this week. And everybody else is in a sort of don't hurt me if I don't hurt you mode. Now, here's the tragic part. There was only 3 actions this week. The French were to lose both Trinidad and Orinoco to the Danes and the... Oh, I've got the Swedes there. Look at that. The Swedes have gone mad. No, that's meant to be the Danes. The Danes and the pirates. And the poor old Frenchies didn't have a defence for either of those. However, they did jump in and retake Rousseau, which is just north of the capital. It's literally 5-10 minutes sail from the French capital, Fort Royal. And that, my friends, is all there was RVR-wise. And really, this is the story of the week. Last week, numbers were down considerably. I'm not quite sure if it's because folks have just given up. There's too many nations on global who really can't put together a competitive port battle fleet, and I think those who tried really hard to get their folks on side and get stuck in, and after a period of time they've just gone, ugh, it's too much. And I think perhaps combined with the fact that there was all sorts of talk about new mechanics and a complete re-diddly-do of how RVR might be working in the future, and the expected sort of patch hiatus we might find ourselves under during the Unity 5 conversion, although there is some light in the tunnel there, and it might not be a train. I'll touch on that in a moment. But really, as far as RVR's concerned, it were right sad. There was some open world biffo going on, as there always is, but with last week's numbers were, I would say a 30% drop off, and then tragically there's been another 30% drop off this week. I've heard the other server is suffering from a fall in numbers as well. I think they've had a steadier decline over a longer period, whereas global seems to just fallen off a cliff over the last fortnight. So, Friday night my time, there'd be high, almost 200 players on. There was less than 100 on this Friday night, which is, a bit pants. In saying that, we also got ourselves, I was sailing around with a bunch of lads, 7 or 8 of us, and we biffed up some pirates, and we managed to sink one. The others ran away quite bravely, and tragically their revenge fleet lay in wait for us, and you know, we tagged the 3 runners, only to then be piled into by all sorts of heavy and well captained ships. Now, what got me in that battle, I was in one of the slower ships, or certainly the way I sail it and set it up, it's one of the slower ships. As I was sailing into the melee, and I sort of looked ahead at this splendid vista. You've got this beautifully rendered ocean, a fantastically rendered sky. We had the backdrop of a spit of land off to the sort of northeast of the map. And as I'm looking at it, I can see one of the guys on my team, he's in trouble. He's got ships either side of him. If he turns to his left, he's going to run into land. If he turns to his right, he's going to go into the wind with a larger ship next to him, which would open him up to a boarding action. He's getting pounded on both sides. Cannon smoke and sparks are flying left, right and centre. I look to the centre of the battle, and 3 ships are positioning around each other on a 2v1. The bigger ship is dominating with its broadsides. The smaller ships are trying to get onto his backside and onto his sails. I look to my right, and there's essentially a couple of 2v2s going on, and you know that if one of them goes down, then all of a sudden, you know, it's going to be a 4-on-3 in that neck of the woods. And it was this fantastic vista of different sized ships all thrashing each other around. And I had to think to myself, how can you have a combat engine that is as delicious as this? A game that's, it's so different than other games. I've played a majillion different games, be it flying planes or tanks or submarines or more modern age ship games, or, you know, your fantasy type stuff and car games and all of this sort of stuff. And the visual splendour of this is as good as almost anything. I have to say Elite and Star Citizen do it a little bit more for me. I think they're gorgeous looking games. But the visual splendour of the battle is just overwhelmingly good. The sound is so good now. They've put so much effort into the sound. The ambient crew, the rip of the cannons, the plumes of smoke and the sparks going through them as a cannon rips out. And you look at it and you go, how can you have a combat engine this good, and not be able to make a game that is just, you know, we should be getting error bloody 43s, I can't get onto the server errors, not, oh my god, my ping's higher than the number of users on board. So it's a bit of a worrying time for naval action at the moment. The numbers have literally fallen off a cliff in the last fortnight. I'm not quite sure if a couple of other games have come out. Nothing big to my knowledge is grabbing players up. I think people are a little bit sort of alpha exhausted. The constant chopping and changing. The fundamental game hasn't really had solid content. There's been tinkering around how combat ROE works. There's been tinkering around RVR. There's been tinkering around ship balancing. Now, all of that is great and good. All of that should be happening. Tinkering around trading and crafting, all of that is what we expect. But, you know, there should just have been dollops and dollops of additional content, be it raids, be it contracts to take out players, be it some genuine content for pirates, be it a better player-based economy with player-driven contracts and the likes. There's, you know, I think one of the reasons so many of us tune into this game and get passionate about it is because we can see here the bones of something splendid. And yet it's been a long time now, I don't know how long, 18 months since we left the open sea trials. And I know the devs are trying, and I know that, you know, they're closer to an indie team than a big team, but they're struggling to compel players to stick around. There is no marketing campaign to really draw in lots of players, and it's you know, it is one of these games. You watch a video of one of these battles, and you just go, "Wow, man, this game rocks the world." But there's sort of reason to keep coming back. I mean, I log in for 2 reasons. One, I genuinely love the whole look and feel of the game. But secondly, I'm in a clan with some really good guys who are just fun. do daft things, and very Australian, and I just love it. But if you're not in with a bunch of mates, or if a few of your mates, I mean, in the clan I'm in, 2 or 3 of the guys who I would, consider as mad as me and as hardy as me, they've sort of taken a 2-week break or a 3-week break because, what are they doing? But anyway, numbers are really, really broken at the moment, and if you do find a battle, it's as glorious as ever. And I've noticed, players grouping up and almost not quite arranging to meet, but more or less arranging to meet and having a biff. And I've not seen any evidence that the devs have got a bit of a plan. I know they've got the Legends thing, the sort of World of Warships style version of this coming out. I think that's going to be super popular. I really do. I mean, I'm really looking forward to that. Quite often, I'll only have an hour that I can drop in. And there's not much you can do in an hour in open world, which is sort of one of the problems to some extent. There's not much constructive you can do in just an hour's gameplay. Now, I love my Saturday afternoon sailing around with my buddies, crafting ships, doing missions, going out and trying to find some PvP fun, setting up a port or doing a port battle. That's fantastic, and I really enjoy committing the time to that. But it needs a vibrant community for it to be great, and at the moment, there's probably more people on the forums than there are on the ocean. And you get quite a bit of destructive commentary as well. People are annoyed because their glorious game is proving not to be glorious. So this week, really, there was only those 3 nations. The rest of them didn't really do a great deal. Like I say, quite a bit of open world malarkey, but nothing special. The open world hotspots, or indeed lukewarm spots as it is at the moment, well, they're the regular places. I should probably have got rid of that one. That's a dead area. But they're the regular places, basically just look for borders between foes, so pirates and Brits, anywhere the poor Frenchies are, Americans and pirates, and so on and so forth. There'll be some more biffo in the Antilles. I expect the pirates to be aggravating down on the coast here. The Brits are going to hit Savannah La Martinite. That'll be interesting to see if the pirates show up. The Brits have set this one up, so it should be an Aussie v Aussie thing. We know there's a bunch of Aussies on who play for the pirates, or I think even one of them's a dirty Kiwi. So hopefully that'll be a fun fight, if it's a fight at all. Let's hope it is. Let's just get into what's going on, Dev-Ness. So the good news, I suppose, and something that I think will be rather lovely jubbly, is that the Unity 5 conversion will hit the test server this week. So a bit like when they were testing the latest and greatest release, you'll be able to go into Steam, enter a Steam key that they'll pop on the forums. They haven't done it yet, or they haven't done it at the time I'm gibbering. And you'll be able to log in and play on the Unity 5 engine, which I believe will have some new ships on it as well. Now, given it's only taken them such a short time to get from their current version to 5, either they've been working on it in secret, or they've done what in computer terms we refer to as a lift and shift, where they've just ported the code without any re-architecture or augmentation. So that means there'll be no real tuning benefits other than come sort of as the latent capability of the Unity 5 server. So if the Unity 5 server renders shadows nicer, we'll get those nicer shadows. If the Unity 5 server has better FPS, we'll get that better FPS. But I suggest in the time that the devs have taken to move, they've not re-architected the game a great deal. Unity 5 offers the devs the ability to put far more objects into game. Every single thing is an object. A ship is an object, cargo is an object, a mod is an object, everything's an object. And under Unity 4, with the way they had instrumented all the attributes in the game, they'd exhausted the number of objects they could play with, which is one of the reasons some of the new ships didn't make it into the latest version and everything. So Unity 5 will give them a good basis for moving forward from, and that's great to hear. And perhaps then they can surge on to something that will make the game more viable and enjoyable. Will open world survive when legends come? Only if they do some good stuff with it. At the moment, it's so hard to get fun in open world. Like I say, port battles are fantastic. The whole nature of the RVR and the effort that goes into organising it and the fun that's to be had with the betrayals and the likes, for me is a great game. But it needs a player base. And over the last 2 weeks, certainly on Global, I'm not sure on the other server, the player base has collapsed. I've noticed in the forums 3 or 4 guys really pegging in for we need the server merge. But of course the thing is there's a lot of folks who just can't tolerate the night flips, and I totally understand that. I understand why you don't want to go to bed knowing that the port you worked so hard to take is in your hands, and then you wake up in the morning and some dirty Antipodean fleet sailed in there while you're Zedding it away and nicked your port. There's 100 ways to fix this. We all know them. We've all discussed them. There's 30 forum threads on different ways of doing this. I've done half a dozen videos where I've spoken about different ways of doing it. But nonetheless, the server merge really can't happen until the global community and a global mechanic has been implemented. Or we get used to the idea that in a persistent RVR, if you are so weak you cannot play 24/7, then you're not going to be involved in port defences. So that's it. Now the other thing is, I really enjoy the comments that follow up my videos that I do. There's some good conversation in there. I don't moderate them, but try and not be, too chuffing rude to each other. People are allowed an opinion and you're allowed to have a different one. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a twat. They might be a twat, but perhaps that's something you could discuss on Twats to the King or somebody else's channel. So that's pretty much it. We'll have a quick look at the... Oh, hello, newsflash. Newsflash, another person's logged on to Global. We'll have a quick look at the tally of Splinters, Sail and Blood before we go. So the Pirates and the Danes both made 4 ports. That was Orinoco and Trinidad down south of the Antilles there. And the poor old Frenchies lost 8 ports, and that's it. That's all that happened. It's patheticness. I think the Frenchies took a few ports off the Danes. They took Roseau, but Roseau, I don't know. But the net effect was the Danes are 4 up, the Rats are 4 up, and the Spanish, Swedes, Americans, Cloggies, and the Brits, no change at all. So that's it for this week's Letter to the King. Let's see how much fun we can eke out of this next week, and I certainly will be having a little look at the Unity 5 engine. I'm also excited because I believe there's going to be a couple of new ships. So typically when they throw us onto the test server, they give you a bunch of redeemable money and some trading, some crafting XP, and they throw a few ships into the redeemables so that you're not starting on day 0 and you can have a fertile around, and really what they're looking for is a bit of a shakedown test as to how their server works, etc, etc. Anyway, that's it for this week's Letter to the King. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. If you log on, I'll see you on the ocean, and I will catch you.